Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and Marvel Studios is now breaking its silence on their big future plans with the Mutant Saga beyond Avengers Secret Wars, including confirmations of an actual X-Men movie in early development and the decision not to reboot this franchise after the multiverse saga. How is that going to work? Well, in this video, I'm going to break down how the new clues we have learned about adamantium are not just details setting up Doomsday and Secret Wars, but really early seeds being planted for a Marvel Studios X-Men film. And be sure to check out nerdriot.shop, where we have all kinds of great nerdy shirt designs like this wingspan shirt that go directly to supporting what we do here at New Rockstars. Okay, in the past week, Marvel Studios executive Brad Winderbaum confirmed that an actual MCU X-Men movie will be the next major Marvel team-up movie coming after Avengers Secret Wars. Talking with Screen Rant, Winderbaum was asked, "There's a report that went out recently that Academy X could be something in the works. What can you say about Marvel's live-action plans for mutants on the television front?" Winderbaum said, "I think anybody could say anything online and it hits the rumor mill and people get excited. Right now we are still working on X-Men 97 Season 2. It's coming together amazingly, and the scripts for Season 3 are insane. That is certainly scratching the X-Men itch for me on television, and there is an X-Men feature in development right now, so that is the focus of X-Men currently." An X-Men feature in development! Finally, let's go! And by the way, you did hear correctly there. We are looking at X-Men 97 Season 2 coming out in 2026, along with your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man Season 2 coming out in 2026, and Daredevil Born Again Season 2 coming out in 2026, along with the Vision Quest show, and a Punisher special presentation, and Avengers Doomsday and Spider-Man 4. So it's going to be a very big year next year. Now, Marvel head Kevin Feige had already indicated that the Mutant Saga and the X-Men would be the next title coming after Secret Wars at the Disney APAC Content Showcase back in November.
I think you will see that continue into our next few movies and some X-Men players that you might recognize. And then right after that, the whole story of Secret Wars really leads us into a new age of mutants and of the X-Men. And again, one of these dreams come true that we finally had the X-Men back in Huddleston.
And for years, we've been assuming that on the other side of Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, that those multiversal events will be so calamitous to the current infrastructure of the MCU and other adjacent Marvel universes that it will have to end with this universe getting rebooted in some way to have the Fantastic Four and the mutants part of whatever the universe is going forward. But then, in a different interview with the Screen Off Script podcast, Winderbaum confirmed that the studio is not really planning to reboot either.
We're about to approach Secret Wars. What are your thoughts on the idea of a full MCU reboot? Is that something that's ever been considered or even discussed in passing?
You're going to have to ask Kevin about the features. I'm on the TV side, but, we do navigate the same waters and live in the same universe. Look, I'm a comic fan. I've read comics, since I was 12 years old. And I've seen what happens at comic companies when things get full reboots. Every time there's been a full reboot in DC or DC in particular, you can't really fully reboot anything. The classics always come back around. It's a very difficult thing to do to a living, breathing fictional universe to just start from scratch because of all the fan investment and love for the stories that have come so far.
So the X-Men are coming, and the MCU as we know it is not rebooting, but most of this architecture in its current form will survive after the events of Doomsday and Secret Wars. Now, to be clear, I think Winderbaum was really just clarifying that they don't plan to completely wipe the slate clean and recast all of their heroes with just fully reconceived versions of the characters. That really is what he's referring to with like a complete reboot. Still, the Fantastic Four lineup that are being introduced in the Fantastic Four First Steps begin their journey in a separate universe, so we have to assume that Marvel Studios intends on those four occupying the MCU with the other Marvel heroes we know at some point in the future. They didn't cast the four of them just for a different Fantastic Four to get established in the 616. There's going to be some process by which known Marvel heroes from other universes kind of immigrate into the MCU and stay here after Secret Wars. And we understand the first step of that process will be incursions. Incursions, of course, being the collisions between universes. But that could lead to a situation in Avengers Secret Wars in which Battleworld is assembled using broken chunks of various universes. Maybe the Manhattan of the MCU could be made up of the Midtown and the Hell's Kitchen of the MCU, but the East Village of Fantastic Four and the Westchester County from further upstate of a separate X-Men universe, or maybe even the Genosha or the Krakoa drama of an X-Men universe that we've never seen before. And then after Franklin Richards and his Future Foundation resolves the multiverse crisis at the end of Secret Wars, we would be left with an MCU in which the 616 universe looks mostly as it did before, but just has a Baxter building along Manhattan's East River and like an Xavier Mutant Academy up the Hudson in Westchester County. But this whole narrative path puts in a new context why adamantium was introduced in Captain America Brave New World. In a recent video, I broke down everything we learned about the MCU version of adamantium from the fourth Captain America movie, including the reason it's stored at 815 degrees Celsius or 1500 degrees Fahrenheit, coming from the same 2008 Marvel reference book as the only actual printed source of the numerical designation of Marvel Earth 199999. Isn't that interesting? Now, outgoing Marvel executive Nate Moore also gave some context for why adamantium was put in this movie to Entertainment Weekly. He said, now that we can build the path towards X-Men, we want to start sprinkling in these things so that it doesn't feel like you're going to drink from a fire hose when that movie comes, so that the MCU starts to lay the groundwork for what could come. Merging Team Up with the idea of it being the birthplace of adamantium, we thought was really interesting because it's something that's only in the MCU. Obviously, we take our cues from publishing a lot, but we are building a massive story in the MCU, and we wanted to start to layer on what we've done in the past to make it all feel like one cohesive story. Now, from that, I derived that Marvel Studios just likes the idea that in the MCU, adamantium is a kind of gift from the gods, or a Promethean tool stolen from the gods that was just created when Cersei stopped the emergence of the celestial Tiamat by transfiguring him into marble. Nothing makes your home smell better than something tasty baking in the oven. Wild Grain lets you smell the delicious baked good that create it with way less hassle. Wild Grain is the first ever bake from frozen subscription box for sourdough bread, fresh pastas, artisanal pastries, cookies, and more. Unlike typical supermarket bread, Wild Grain uses a slow fermentation process that can be easier on your belly, richer in nutrients and antioxidants, and help lower blood sugar spikes. They've got a ton of options, including gluten-free offerings, plus everything Wild Grain offers bakes in 25 minutes or less from the freezer. We've had their cookies, croissants, and biscuits in the office, and they all got high praise. The most recent hit was their sourdough loaf, and it disappeared so fast. There was just a trail of crumbs leading to people's desks. If you want to check out Wild Grain, be sure to click on my link in the description and use my code Rockstars to get $30 off your first box, plus you'll get free croissants for life. Director Julius Ona told Variety that they had one version of the movie that had Sam Wilson and other characters going onto or inside of Celestial Island. Asked, did you ever think about going onto the island itself? And Ona said, we did. We played with a few versions of that, but you never want to overwhelm the movie with too many elements that aren't necessarily moving forward the story in the way you want. So I'm guessing the scene was conceived to explain why when Cersei transfigured Tiamat, his outer shell looks like white marble, but like on the inside, certain internal organs or tissue, or maybe just his skull and bones of his skeleton were now made of adamantium. I don't know if Tiamat always had an adamantium skeleton or if that only happened after Cersei transfigured him. I go back and forth on that. Like if it happened after Cersei transfigured him, it would mean that the adamantium was an accidental byproduct of an eternal defying their creator gods and thus a Promethean tool that had been stolen from the gods. Or if all celestials just have adamantium innards, it would mean that Cersei just really stopped Tiamat by turning most of his tissue into marble, but that she was unable to transfigure his adamantium bones, which would mean that adamantium is so divinely strong that it even resists any kind of transfiguration sorcery. And you could extrapolate that to places like Wolverine versus Scarlet Witch. She ain't gonna turn his adamantium into like silly putty. He would only be vulnerable to mutants who can control metal, like Magneto. But I digress. This shows that Marvel Studios wants a clearly established origin point for adamantium in the 616 universe. And in Captain America Brave New World, President Ross's White House Celestial Island Summit explained that he planned to work with other countries to use adamantium for technology, medical applications, and weaponry. And the medical uses, I suppose also the weapons uses in this case, seem to be a nod to the Weapons Plus program that gave us Wolverine. It may also be a reference to what happened to the spine of Bullseye between Daredevil Season 3 and Daredevil Born Again. Before, that metal was called cognium, but since the surgeon was connected to Lady Deathstrike and adamantium is now in this shared universe, this coming season could retcon that metal to be adamantium as it is in the comics. But it may also mean that Marvel Studios plans to introduce the mutants of their Mutant Saga in the near future of this universe. Like the process for James Logan Howlett's surgery would happen sometime after 2027 in that in-universe timeline. And if that origin point stays true for all the X-Men characters, it might also mean that Magneto would no longer be defined by his historical connections to World War II. And we will see if Marvel Studios could actually stick with that. I don't know if the studio could really get away with erasing those parts of Magneto's backstory. I've brought this up in past videos, calling it the Magneto problem. Whatever Magneto that gets introduced in this universe will, for many fans, be considered dead on arrival if his trauma is retconned away from the Holocaust into some other historical tragedy. So really, that's why I think Marvel Studios is going to move forward with what we're calling a hybrid approach to introducing mutant characters. Some iconic X-Men will live on for a time in the Mutant Saga, played by the actors that they were in the past film eras, including Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. That guy's going to do it till he's 90. Kelsey Grammer as Beast, Patrick Stewart as Charles Xavier, Ian McKellen as Magneto, maybe Halle Berry as Storm, James Marsden as Cyclops. It just kind of feels like we're going to see some of them or all of them in Secret Wars. But at the same time, I think Secret Wars is going to establish a completely new universe of X-Men characters using a location like the mutant island colonies of Genosha or Krakoa, and they will have a backstory from the 20th century that looks like a live-action X-Men 97. That indeed could be the universe that we saw in the Marvel's post-credit scene, since that Beast character design, despite being voiced by Kelsey Grammer, did have a design with an underbite that looked like the Beast from the 90s X-Men animated run. I think that will be the universe that gives us at least our Magneto and maybe our Charles Xavier. We need some of these characters to come from other universes and stay in the 616. They, like the Fantastic Four from First Steps, will just be Marvel characters who are left in the MCU feeling somewhat displaced from their time and from their worlds, but just wise enough to handle it and also be in a position to bring new knowledge to the MCU that it didn't have from its own history. And then at the same time, I think Marvel Studios will continue this plan that Nate Moore and Winterbaum and Feige are talking about, slow sprinkling in references to their own mutant plan, including adamantium's birthplace as Celestial Island and the existence of a mutant gene and characters like Kamala Khan and Namor. And they're going to do this so that the studio can introduce a new lineup of young actors in the 616 universe to play mutants like Scott Summers, Jean Grey, Wolverine, Gambit, Rogue, and the rest. And since Wolverine is just regenerative and ageless since his birth in the mid-19th century, he could still have had an origin in the World War II of this universe, the one that Steve Rogers fought in Captain America the First Avenger. It could just be that this Wolverine hadn't gotten an adamantium skeleton until 2027 or later, with the adamantium taken from Celestial Island. And maybe the fact that it's a resource that's shared with Japan, the Silver Samurai, could be part of the 616 Wolverine's origin. My hope is that we get some answers about this, at least one answer about it, when it comes to the MCU Weapons Plus program in the Thunderbolts movie, because Bob Reynolds Sentry seems like he could have been part of a historical super soldier experiment program. Comment down below with your thoughts on all this, and big thanks to Brandon Barrick for his help researching this video. Follow me at EA Voss, subscribe to all 3 channels in the new Rockstars network for breakdowns and news coverage of everything you love. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.